Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood show. My special guest is Sean Hross. Is it pronounced Hross or Ross? What was it?
Yeah, well, you don't pronounce the H. Actually, it's an old Nordic name, and if you interchange the R and the O, you get horse. And
Oh,
if you
yeah?
take away the H, it gets Ross, and like in German. So the Germanic tribes, they split into two ways. And Ross, it means also a horse, like horse. It's etymologically the same. Well, it's the first word for horse. It's still being used in Iceland, actually.
How interesting. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of Iceland, there's a dude from Iceland who's speaking here in Auckland tonight. I think about 5:30 at the Auckland University, the Owen Glen Business School. He's going to be talking about how he led the Iceland Revolution, which jailed a couple of the big, massive, evil bankers, and got their country back on track, economically speaking. So that's bound to be fun. Here's an obscure reference for you.
I heard something about this, yeah.
Yeah. So
Actually, I'm a veteran as well. I was in the war in Angola, Namibia, in South Africa, in Rhodesia, in Cabinda, and it's wrong, all these wars. I mean, we're fighting the wars for imperialism, for others to get rich, and we die. I was in Afghanistan as well in 1985. I can't talk too much about it. There's something you have to know. There's a name. It's very important. It's called Octagon. It's with a C, Octagon. So look it up on YouTube. You get to my film like Octagon rules over Pentagon, and they do rule over Pentagon. So what's Octagon? The CIA, they also have some files over it. They call it the Red House files. There's not many people who know about it, and I know that Octagon did 9/11 as well. So Octagon, it's like H-shaped or octagonal shape, and why octagonal? Because if you draw a line around the Templar's cross, you get an octagonal shape. And the Swiss cross is also, it's a simplified Templar's cross with the same colors. And if you draw a line around it, you get an octagonal shape. And this is why most of the police badges in England, New Zealand, Australia, the police hats in New York, they all have an octagonal shape. Because in the Middle Ages it was the Templars, and nowadays Templars is the Blue Octagon Army. It's the police, and they rule. They are the Templars. They never disappeared, and actually, they founded Switzerland, and this is a very strange country. They financed the wars. They financed Adolf Hitler in 1923 with 30,000 Swiss francs, which is about $500,000 today. Funny enough, after the Black Tuesday, before the American Depression in 1929 October, only 6 months later, the Nazis with Hjalmar Schacht, he was the Nazi banker of Hitler, they founded a bank in Basel, which is called the BIS, which is the Bank of International Settlements, which is the bank, the central bank of all the central banks. And this is how they got the money of what was stolen of the Americans just before the Depression. This is how they got it into Switzerland, and they financed the Nazis with it. This is how they did it. And which is very important to know is that the last of the Crusades took place in 1291. And Aachen in the north of Israel now, that fell on May 18th, 1291. Only 2.5 months later, the time to get back, they founded Switzerland. On August 1st, 1291. It's still the national holiday, which they celebrate each year. So it's very obvious, and if you look at the flag, that the Templars, they founded Switzerland. And and it's very obvious as well, because the Templars, they were the banks of Europe during the Middle Ages for hundreds of years. And they invented the check, and they lent money to kings and all that. So it's very obvious that the famous Templars treasure went into Switzerland. And actually the aim was not Jerusalem, though they killed many people there. A lot of Jews they killed as well. All of them probably in Jerusalem. And the aim was the pyramids and the Pharaoh's treasures, because the Templars, they were no monks. The Templars, in fact, they were second. It was a tradition in the Middle Ages for a second or third son, nobleman or king or a baron or something. He didn't get anything. It was only the first son who got the castle, the power, the cattle, the concubines, everything. And for the second, third sons or daughters, there was a tradition to go into a monastery. And in the monastery, there were so many of them at a certain moment, they got organized and they said, well, we're fed up with this monastery life. We're going to make our own kingdom. And for a kingdom, you need money. And that's why they did the Crusades to, not Jerusalem, in fact, but to the pyramids. And in order to get the military support of the Europeans, they said the same thing like in 91, before the Gulf War, as they said, well, Saddam Hussein is having weapons of mass destruction. Then they said, well, there's this holy city where God lives and the Son of God with his mother and his grandmother. It's called Jerusalem and it must be saved. So that's how they got all the Europeans with them. And Octagon is so the name of the Templars, and they are ruling this world, and they did 9/11. And actually, there were more and more of these pharaohs, and the word pharaoh is coming etymologically from two words in the Demotic language, which is a sort of simplified pharaonic hieroglyph language, because the hieroglyphs were only used for religious purposes only. So there was a Demotic language, and the word pharaoh is coming from two words, per a. And per, it means the house, and big, that means, and it means big. So that means a big house, which is not the pyramid, but it is the big royal house of the pharaonic bloodline.
So it's
and
not.
Is
so it's not
what?
like New Jersey slang for jail.
For jail?
Yeah, the big house.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I didn't know that. Is it that big? Don't they have small prisons?
Well, I don't know. The rate of incarceration of non-violent criminals these days, I bet they should be pretty frickin' big.
Yeah. Actually, for my YouTube films, they sent me in 2011, they sent me a terrorist squad. I don't call it an anti-terrorist squad. It was a terrorist squad. They put 3 guns on my head, a bandage over my eyes, handcuffs, foot cuffs. And now I'm getting murder threats by Octagon that I shouldn't talk about the Templars and Octagon and that they're ruling the world. And actually, in those days, there were coming more and more pharaohs in Europe, and they were having wars because all of them wanted to be the king and wanted to have the castle, as I just explained with the Templars and all that. So the wars, we had to fight them over their problems. And but after hundreds of years of wars, because the king, he wanted to stay king for all his life, and after that he even decided his son and his grandsons would be the king afterwards. So there were a lot of other pharaohs that wanted to be king as well. And after all these wars, they said, well, we have to get together. So they got together, and they came to a conclusion. They said, well, we can't go on like this because we're going to destroy everything. We're not going to get any further. Not even we get any further. Not our slaves either. And so they decided a new system, and they said, well, everybody can be king for 4 years. You know where I'm getting at, eh?
Yeah,
and
the presidency.
And then they said, well, who's going to vote for being king for 4 years? We can't vote because nobody is impartial of us. We know what's going on. And then some of them said, the stupid people, they're going to vote, the demos. So, and this is how democracy started off, and it is a circus. It's.
Sean, I see so many people promoting. I see so many people promoting freedom, and complaining about the loss of their democracy and how we need more democracy and things like that because we're being overruled by vicious tyrants. Excuse me, it was vicious tyrants that came up with democracy and vicious tyrants that benefit from democracy as well. Why do you still want the thing that gives you vicious tyrants controlled by vicious tyrants?
Very well said, Vinny. Very well. Exactly. This is how it is. And these, I call them the Nazis. The Nazis, they were the Templars as well. Hitler, he was financed. I've got pictures of him being in Switzerland in 1923. And Octagon, that's Switzerland. The Freemasons, they came out of the Templars. So Octagon, it's like a spider's web. A spider has 8 legs as well, just like Octagon, octagonal. And Octagon, Switzerland, they're ruling the whole world. And they're giving orders to the worldwide web of Freemasons. And they're sitting all everywhere in every government on key position. And that's why no country in the world will ever do anything against the Swiss banks, which came from the Templars, and against Switzerland. No country will ever do anything against that.
I was thinking truthers should start some kind of a banking thing. Like, I've had the problem with PayPal recently, and I was just thinking how awesome it would be to have a truther run Cayman Islands or Swiss Bank or something like that, so that all the people who are actually fighting for freedom and justice and things like that in the world would have their own financial havens where the bankers couldn't steal their frickin' money. But the problem is,
Yeah,
all those havens are controlled by the bankers in the first place.
yeah, they are. I want to tell you another thing. I mean, I was in the military for a while. I know a couple of things, and there's this torture going on, like waterboarding. And waterboarding, actually, the code name of waterboarding is not waterboarding inside the service. The name is O2T, O2 for oxygen and T for torture. And this is a white torture because there's no proof. There's no flesh wounds. But every cell in the body is going to be damaged because of it's a human fact that when a human breathes in, 80% of the oxygen goes into the head first. And so this is where the information is. And this type of torture, like a person that can't breathe, it will create a hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen in the organs, tissues. And this further on will make a glycolysis, which is a chemical breakdown of glucoses into lactic acids under anaerobic conditions. So if you see those guys like in Gitmo or Guantanamo with these masks, I mean, we've all been asking, why do they have these masks? Well, they have them because they can't breathe enough. They will never get enough oxygen. It's hot there as well. So they're being tortured by O2T, and this will wreck a person for the rest of his life because every cell in the human body will be tortured, and you don't see a thing from the outside. I have some medical analysis of it, official. Don't ask me how I got them. And this has to do with the reason as well that I don't want to put the video on. There's an English bloke, a Scottish bloke. He has put them on the internet under the Zurich files in Google, and I made a film about it where I filmed it, I videotaped it, so you can read it. So just look for O2T, and then you know what waterboarding really is.
Okay. Well, it's just basically oxygen deprivation. Like they try all these different types of deprivation on you, like sleep deprivation,
Yeah,
food deprivation, water deprivation, light deprivation, human contact deprivation, I think. And
exactly.
I'm noticing a common theme here. If you want to torture somebody, if you want them to suffer, just take away the things that they need to survive properly.
Yeah, it's very well said with the deprivation. Exactly, that's it. And oxygen is the most important thing. I mean, you can't do very long without oxygen.
It's really quite. And what the interesting thing I find about it is, torture doesn't actually work. Like, if you're trying to get information out of somebody, torturing doesn't actually work. The only thing torture really accomplishes is scare the hell out of people who aren't being tortured. Like, that's basically the point of it, isn't it? It's pure terrorism. Meet our demands or we will torture you. And I don't care what information you give us. We're going to make you suffer, and we're going to torture your children in front of you and your wife and your family and all of that kind of stuff, right? That's the whole intention of it. To scare people off fighting against them for fear that they might get tortured. Whereas those people who are being deprived of their human rights and liberties and things like that, they're very, very rarely anybody who possesses any information. And the torturer doesn't give a frack if they've got information or not. It's just their job to terrorise them, you know? And yet, they're not the terrorists, are they? No, it's the people that they're torturing without trials or rights of any kind that are the bad guys. Right? Isn't that how we're supposed to really look at things? In the exact opposite way to the way things really are? How did society get like this, you know? How did we slowly turn from caring about others, thinking that rights mattered, and having a heart, having a brain, having a soul, to being this massive apparatus of evil? We'll be right back after the break.